everybody, my name is Oshi and today I'm going to be your host. I am from LondonFuse and this workshop is being brought to you in partnership between LondonFuse and London Heritage Council for the Celebrating Communities programming that's happening on the 2nd of August. I have been a part of the LondonFuse community for about 4 years now. Currently, I'm the sitting Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Director, and I've also been a contributor for that entire length of time. I'm so excited to be able to bring this content to you. We are going to be focusing on zine making, and we'll get a little bit more into what we're going to see today after we take a moment to do a land acknowledgement, and I'll see you on the other side and make sure that you know what to expect today. We acknowledge that we are on traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape and Attawandaron peoples, on lands connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. With this, we respect the long-standing relationships that Indigenous nations have to this land, as they are the original caretakers. We acknowledge historical and ongoing injustices that Indigenous people endure in Canada. This mere statement is not enough to right the wrongs. We must all aspire to be active allies in truth and reconciliation. Alongside this, we also recognize the anti-racist and anti-hate work that we must continue to do. So as I mentioned, today we are focusing on zine making, and as you can see, I'm surrounded by a lot of zines from a lot of different zine makers, and the majority of them actually in London. So today you're going to get an opportunity to hear from a couple of zine makers right here in London who do some amazing work, but then also you're going to learn what is a zine, how to make a zine, and if you are interested in learning more on making zines or maybe even having access to zines, how can you do it? So that's the plan for the day. Very relaxed yet educational 45 minutes for you, and I would suggest getting comfortable, grabbing a drink, and if you are hoping to follow through, I would even suggest, maybe having a couple of letter-sized papers if you do, and if not, what you'll get at the end of this or somewhere in the beautiful technological world is a little package, a PDF that sort of goes through everything I've spoken about, introductions to the people we're gonna meet, and also some really basic tools on how to get you started with zine making. So I'm really excited. So let's jump into it.
I'm Jill Clair, aka Zine Fiends. I started Zine Fiends as a group, and it's also occasionally my pseudonym. I was at a point in my life where I needed to have something that was mine, where I felt pretty intimidated and isolated in the community that I was in at that time. And I turned to zines because I had been working at a comic book store for a few years, and I was sort of through that familiar with the subculture. And after I made my first one, there was something so powerful about seeing a project through to completion. And I have kind of been making zines for the last 8 years and counting as a result of that. I think first and foremost, when it comes to zines and activism, it's an opportunity to get all of your thoughts on paper and present and refine your point of view as much or as little as you want. When I have engaged with, subjects which some people may find hot topic. I see you have one of my safe injection site zines back there. I tend to engage in a lot of research just to be I want to present this information as objectively as I can and make sure the things that I'm writing about are like backed up, and always publishing my works cited because I'm very cool. I have made a few different varieties of zines over my zine making life. I began by making comics, and I still do comics occasionally, through basically the mentorship of a local artist, Jenna Rose Sands. I've been trying to do more collage-based work. There's also a real like wealth of information with Sammy Orlowski, who I know is well known to the LondonFuse world. I get a lot of inspiration from her collages. They're really beautiful, really great work. And then I do some text-based zines as well. So that would be like the Safe Injection Site one. This top one here is a combination of collage and text-based. I made it for my band's most recent tape release. So it's about police brutality, local, historical, and international. And then, yeah, like I was saying earlier, I reserved the final page for works cited. You can find me on Etsy at Zine Fiends. I'm on Instagram by the same name, and I am on Facebook under Forest City Zine Fiends. This is a situation I've been in before, and it's always tough to know what is going to get through them specifically. So I know what worked for me, and what I tend to tell people is you just got to do it. Your first one, it might be awful, and that's okay. You just need to see the project through until the end. You need to have an understanding of what's involved or what's not involved, and I think encourage that curiosity, you know, figure out how to make things better and refine things, talk to other people in the community that you know about how to, you know, bring your zines to the next level, or don't. You know, you can have black and white zines that are just your comics and just your like weird printing, or you can download something like Scribus, which is a totally free like book layout program, and you can do a combination of text and images, like all computer based. So yeah, I would say just do it. When I started making zines, I knew there were other people in London who made zines, but we weren't really connecting with each other. And so part of the reason why I made Zine Fiends, which is a local zinester group, is to get us all together, but also for other people who are like, oh, like, what is a zine? Like, how do I make a zine? There would be this existing wealth of knowledge to tap on. You know, I kind of went in with the premise of let's make this easier for like the next generation of people who are making zines than it was for us sort of like acting alone. And that has really worked out for me. I've met a lot of really wonderful people through Zine Fiends as a result of that.
Yeah.
I had one more point to that too, because something when I first turned to zines that I think pushed me in that direction was feeling really intimidated by like gatekeeping. You know, there's a lot of gatekeeping in music, there's a lot of gatekeeping in comics, and so when you have a zine, which is something which it's really just you making a work and then distributing it to the audience, literally no one else needs to be involved. It was so refreshing, because it's like, oh, I don't need to know like 80 years of zine history to make a zine. I don't need to, you know, be aware of like the greatest zinesters who ever lived, because that's changing all the time, and it's so vast and varied. You know, I don't know if you could ever come up with like the greatest zinester who ever lived, but maybe that's just my ignorance, but I don't think it is. Zine is a self-published work of your own making, be it visual or textual or abstract, period.
So my name is Monica Joy. I'm a queer artist here in London. I go by they, them pronouns. I work interdisciplinary. I do a lot of drawing, ceramics, installation work, and I'm also a member of a gallery called Good Sport, which has the only one that I know of the zine library in London. It's pretty cool. I was like first introduced to zines through Zine Fiends about a year ago. I think it was a year, maybe a year and a half ago, and that really showed me that it's like quite a simple and accessible way to create art that I can then distribute to people without worrying too much about the outcome. It was a lot less pressure than creating a finished piece of art for a gallery or for a submission, because I can make the scale a lot smaller and I can just do it for fun. I think it's provided me a way that I can communicate in a very simple way without feeling too like nervous about if I'm gonna say something right or if it's gonna be misinterpreted, because I can scale down the zines to be like, I like to make these little ones, and then it's only like 8 or 9 pages and I can keep it short and it doesn't have to be too complicated. Like it can just be pen and paper and then I photocopy it, and it's relatively cheap, like it's accessible. I can photocopy them at the library. Right now I think it's free that you can do like 20 copies of something each visit, and it's, I don't know, there's not many other art making avenues that are so affordable, and like even using like printer paper that's not very acceptable for other kinds of art making, but like for zines that is the way to go. Like that's the main way, is that you just photocopy it on the cheapest kind of paper. It doesn't really matter. Currently my favorite way to make zines, it's usually with friends. Like whenever we're like in a making mood, I like to fold them up and then just like trade them, and then we each do a little page. And it results in them not being like very coherent, which I like. Like we're not trying to tell a story, something just like arises out of them regardless. And then we both have control over what comes out of it. And then recently I was making some that are like more about myself, and like this one was specifically about Zine Fiends, and it was about like that having a group of people allowed me to have people to talk to and meet with, and like people that care about what I have to say and I care about what they have to say. But I think for a long time I was trying to find some way of making that was reminiscent of using a sketchbook, because I like that sketchbooks are so stress-free. Like you can write in them, you can draw in them, and there's not too much like pressure that I have to make a finished work in this. Like this is specifically about learning, so there's no like failure or success in it, it's just, it is. So that was very similar, I found, in zines. On most social media I go by MJP Draws. It's my initials, Monica Joy Peeff, and then Draws. I just started that because that was my main thing for a long time, it was drawing, and I go by that or I go by Monica Joy, and my website for my portfolio is monicajoy.ca. I think the first one that I ever like made, and I never ended up even like publishing it, I never even ended up printing it off, because I was putting so much pressure on myself to make it digital and make it like a book and proper, and I was really thinking about what would be on each page, and then I was like, okay, now I have imagery, I don't even know what to write about now. And then making these little like 8-page ones helped me a lot, because it's like, actually I don't have to care so much. Like, I think that if someone is making their first zine, to just like go for it and just do it to be drawing, just do it to be writing, not to be like making a book. Like, just make something to get your words on the page or your emotions out, and you might like it, you might not, it's okay, either way. I think a zine is anything that an artist creates that they're gonna, maybe not even intent of redistributing it or like photocopying it, but it's something that is a similar format to a book, and then other than that it's pretty open to interpretation.
So before we get going to the practical side of things, I'm going to answer a couple of questions about zines. The first often that comes up is, what is a zine? And we've heard a couple of examples, and I'm sure I put the Google definition somewhere around here, but I'm going to share what I think a zine is, just to add it to the mix. For me, a zine is a piece of art that is low cost, accessible, no boundaries, and easily distributed to people. It is a piece of art that is organic, it's raw, and often it instigates conversation, no matter how shallow or deep it may be. It is meant to bring people a sense of interaction when they read it, and it is meant to transcend people beyond just having a conversation, but being a catalyst for that conversation. So I personally love zines, and I'm really excited for you to join us in this journey, and especially jump into the practical side of things and show you how to fold a zine, which is one of my favorite things, but then also look at some examples. Next question I get is, what type of topics should you be tackling with zines? And the honest answer is, the world's your oyster. I focus on mental health, allyship, and comedy, but this can change according to who you are. And often you wouldn't just focus on one type of topic. The great thing about zines is it really does not have any restrictions in what you can tackle, because it is such a free form creative outlet. So I always say, however, as a rule of thumb for myself, that as long as you can stand by it, as long as you're being respectful and honest, any topic's good to go. I always say, if it is an opinion, let people know, even if it's a funny title, just so that the information that you're putting out, the art that you're putting out, is done so responsibly. I want to ensure that that is the basis of which we approach zines with, because you can talk about some really intense topics, but no two people's experience are the same. So you want to ensure that you're not making false claims or even false promises. As I mentioned, I talk about mental health in my zines a lot, but I want to ensure that the folks that I speak to know that A, I'm not a professional, and B, this is my experience I'm talking about. We might have similarities, but our journeys might be entirely different. So it is meant to be a tool for storytelling, information sharing, but most importantly, propagating a sense of community and celebrating yourself and celebrating those groups you're with. Even if it is a zine on a squirrel, we're celebrating that squirrel. We're doing it in a way that we've taken the time, the love to create this, to photocopy it, to fold it, and to distribute it. The last thing that I always get asked is, what type of zines can you make? Is there, a gold standard? And there isn't, there really isn't. It can be digital based, it can be hand-drawn, handwritten, it can be collage based, it can be a mix of everything. You can have watercolors, you can have no colors, you can have no text, you can have all text. It really depends on what you are looking to convey. And that's the beauty of zines, because there are no restrictions and no guidelines to the way you approach a zine. You can pick the best way to speak on the topic that you're speaking to. So today I'm gonna do a very silly one on baby raccoons that destroy my blueberry shrubs. I can't draw raccoons, so it's gonna be fun and interesting. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something that you love to do. And that's what zines are. It is meant to be an outlet. It is meant to be a way of expression. So next, we're gonna look at the practical portion of things. It's gonna be a little shift of the scenery here, but we're gonna start by looking at some examples and then jumping into how do you fold a piece of paper to become a mini zine, and how do you number those pages, what's the method of getting into it, how can you think about topics. I'm gonna look at it a couple of different ways. Again, this is a very basic introduction to zines, and I will talk about some places that you can go to or you can look up to learn a bit more about zines, or even, you know, support some local zine makers. So we're going to look into some examples right now. So I thought I'd pull up my very first zine. So this is not the one, you know, that I made with a friend. This is solo zine. Kind of trying to figure out the first one I ever went home and made, and it's called Identity Crisis. And I just want to show this because I'm asking a lot of you to come in and make your first zine, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And this is still one of my favorite zines. I still have a lot of copies of this. This is something that, you know, I'm still quite proud of. The art style is not Louvre worthy, let's say, but it really does reflect where I was and how I was feeling. So this is one example. Now I'm going to show you one that I have made more recently, which is the Exploring the Mind zine. I made this for a mental health talk that I did, and I wanted it to be sort of an accompanying piece for those that listen to me. So this is when I kind of brought in color for the very first time and also tried some collaging. So I went through some magazines and found some prompts. So the way I did this was the words that I found were prompts for the things that I was speaking about. So it was very fun, but also very stressful to do because this one does dive into a lot about who I am as a person. But the other cool thing that I tried is different color patterns for the background. So what I did was I took a piece of paper, threw some watercolors on it, and then I color photocopied that paper and then did the zine on that. So it's something that you can do. It's something a lot of us actually do kind of tap into. All right, so now I'm gonna jump into some other folks' zines, some that are actually based in London. So the first one I'm gonna look at is one that Clair, that you just heard from, has made. And this one is called Make Your Own Dang Zine. So this is sort of what we are working on. It's a really great zine. It talks about the history of zines. It looks at, you know, why zines, as we've talked a little bit, and what a zine is and its conclusion, and some, you know, more reading that you can do as well. And the great thing is Jill, or Zine Fiends as you know, has been so kind to actually distribute this for free. And in the PDF that you're going to get with this workshop, what you're going to find is one page is actually going to be the larger open version of this zine, and we're going to look at how you can print it out and then cut it up and make it into your mini zine. So, you know, if you forget why you started making zines, we can go back to Jill and see, you know, why you should make your own dang zine or zines. The next one is by Brenda Furman, who's also a local London artist. And their style of zine making is quite different to mine and a lot of others I've seen. They focus on watercolor styled zines. As you can see, they are vivid in their approach. It is very much based in a true story of an area that they lived in Montreal, I believe. And it's just a beautiful aspect of, you know, there's not that many words, and it just tells a story, and it has so much emotion packed into this little mini zine. So when we talk about mini zines, the ones that we have looked at so far are mini zines. Now the next one I'm going to show you is one by Rin van der Hey. They are an amazing artist here in London. They are one half of the Crow and Moon Press, and they have a tiny zine collection, I would say. And another one is Tiny Cats, which I also have, but I really love this one because they work actually at this size. And it's so detailed. I'm hoping the focus is on. They're so detailed and they're so stunning. And again, you know, there's not much words involved in this, but it is really the emotion that the painting and the colors invokes. So this takes a lot of work. I'm sure anybody who does any type of art could tell you, but yeah, this is another type of zine. Now this is a very mini zine. It's different to the ones we've looked at so far, as you can see, but you know, this is a standard that a lot of us use because letter paper is quite accessible, but really the size of the zine is up to you. Next, we're gonna look at one of Monica Joy's zines that they actually spoke about to us. This is the piece that they talked about with regards to Zine Fiends, the local zine group, and what it is like to be amongst a group of folks that make zines together. This is quite reminiscent of Monica Joy's art style, or one of their art styles, but it is so stunning, and it just, you know, you can take time and stare at each page, and there's so much to take in. And this is what I love about zines. They are small, but they do pack a punch. The next one I'm going to look at is a zine by Samuel Orlowski. Jill spoke about them and their really beautiful ability to use collage to convey a story. This one's called Crying Problem. And as you can see with this, similar to the one I did, but more based on collage, they have taken pictures, a background, changing up that background, using words, and taking a moment to create ambiance, to create a contrast that's gonna help tell the story about their crying problem. It's actually really stunning, and I'm gonna include all of the information. I almost turned this around. But so if you see any of these that you really like, make sure to go support them. And the last two actually are also of Jill Clair's. We talked about it a little bit, and I wanted to bring it up and show you. This is the piece on safe injection sites. As you can see, it's not bound. This is a really nice way of doing this as well. It's speaking about the safe injection sites, and as they mentioned, this is very much text-based, made on Scribus or Scribus, whichever way you want to say it. I say Scribus, I might be wrong, but it really does hold a lot of information, and it borders on this beautiful pamphlet, but it's one that's really engaging. And also speaking to an issue that, you know, we are encountering here in London. And as they mentioned, of course, they've got their references. Now I wanted to show you this other piece because it shows a beautiful contrast in the work that you can do as a zinester. And this is of Jill Clair's as well. It's a quiz book, and it's called, it's called the Quiz Book. And this is actually quite a fantastic little book indeed. So they've taken a time to kind of actually create this like a book. You see they have their publishing dates and such, and it's quite different. They've used a similar style of using Scribus or Scribus, but the content is so different. This is one of my favorite ones because I always question myself about this. Are you too old for a goth phase? And again, you know, this is a moment where you can put some real beautiful work into something, and create something that you are able to enjoy, sit back, relax, something that you can consume with a friend, or, you know, a partner. Because I know for sure that me and my partner really did take a look at this. So zines really can come in all shapes, all sizes, and speak to different topics. So I want all of you, as we're going into the practical portion, to just take a moment and think about what you want to make. And it doesn't have to be something profound. It can be anything. As I mentioned at the very beginning, mine's gonna be about baby raccoons that eat my blueberry bushes. So let's get into it. But I hope you really do go and support all these artists and take the time to think of how you might be able to use zines in your life, even if it is to convey something amongst your family or your friends, or just for something for people to come together with. And that's the beautiful part of zines. So let's get our hands dirty in making some zines. All right, so we've got a zine folded right now. It is looking good, I hope. Again, to make sure the stop motion-esque instructions were clear enough, I'm just gonna open this up again, just to show you how it comes down to it and how it comes back together. So this is where you made the markings for your pages, and then you go whoop, there, and then close. So that's that again. No, there. So that again, we can see this. So you fold it lengthwise, you bring those 2 points together, you start closing them up, and you've got a book. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna talk to you about sort of how do you get into this. Now depending on the topic, there's a lot of times when you probably would think about what you're going to put on these pieces of paper. However, today we're going to go through the more free-form zine making tutorial. So to get started, we've got a topic, and you can do the same topic as me, but I'm going to use a pencil. We're going to go baby raccoons killed my blueberry dreams. All right, so this is a very real story. I hope nobody out there is judging me. So often I will go in first with pencil, and then I like my micro pens, but again, it really is up to you. So usually a lot of folks might just say, okay, I'm gonna do 1 page, 2 page, and 3 page, 4 page. Sometimes, depending on the topic, you're also welcome to open it up, and since you have your numbered pages, you can sort of go through and decide what you're gonna put in each page. Today, I'm just gonna go with the folded version, going 1 page to the other, sort of deciding what I wanna put in. And again, this does not have to be too serious. Like I mentioned earlier, this workshop, I do not know how to draw baby raccoons. But all you gotta do is start. And what is beautiful about this is that you can go back and correct it, or you can enjoy what you made. So as you're watching this, maybe you feel like, okay, I need some time, but I hope this gives you some inspiration. So I like a mishmash of drawn and written word, so that's what I'm gonna do. So we've got a blueberry bush that does not look too much like a blueberry bush, so hey, I might have to name it. Me. Hey, and that can be page 1 and 2. Next, we go off to the next pages. So as you can see, I'm sort of going 2 pages at a time. It's not cheating. It really is dependent on how you want to do this. Really depends on how you want to do this. What you really want to do with zines is just let it happen. I think both Jill and Monica mentioned that you want this to be something that you just see to the finish. And it can be as silly as a baby raccoon eating a blueberry bush. And there you go, that's a zine. What I'll do is in the PDF version, I'll finish this all beautifully and I'll share it with you. But this can be a zine. And honestly, I love it. I'm hoping that this shows you that making a zine is not something so impossible or something that's out of anybody's reach, clearly. And the nice thing is, yes, it can be about baby raccoons, or it can be about mental health, and it can be about social justice issues, it can be about global issues, or it can be about your story. And that's the beautiful thing about zines. What we're here to do is to share our stories, to share our knowledge, or to share others' knowledge in a way that you can pass on to somebody and say, hey, here's a zine. This is what I think about this topic, and I would love for you to read it and let me know. Because often, as we know, in a lot of topics, personal, social justice, or even otherwise, sometimes you need a prop, and zines can be that prop. But I am so excited to see all of your different zines. I'll put some hashtags up, but if you can tag us or use those hashtags so that we can see if you did actually make a zine, that would be fantastic. But to end this all off, we're gonna jump into some resources that I really think might be useful. And from there, I will let you go on in your journey, and hopefully zine making is gonna be a part of it. So finally, I want to look at the resource package that you will receive with this workshop and speak a little bit more about how you can continue your journey with zines, zine making, or just zine enjoying. So again, this was for the Celebrating Communities programming. A big thanks to London Heritage Council for giving us this platform. And I hope everybody's enjoying all the programming that's happening. This was, of course, presented by LondonFuse. And here is the table of content. So we start off with our speakers. Just want to give them a huge shout out. Thank you so much to Monica Joy and Jill Clair for taking the time out of their day to come and speak with me about zines and the love of zines. And then of course a huge thank you to Jill Clair for sharing this Make Your Own Dang Zine scan with me so that any of you out there can print this and fold it as we've learned today, and keep it as a reminder about why you started in zines and where you can go from there. And of course, in line with that, I have a small page of a template here on how to fold those zines, so making sure that we are equal on our halves, making sure we're not shy about creasing those edges, and of course cutting from this point to this point to be able to fold into that beautiful little mini zine of yours. And then kindly through Forest City Zine Fiends, I have been able to get a list of some of our local London zinesters that you can look up on Instagram and of course support or even reach out. A lot of these folks are very kind. They are always looking to support other artists, but you can just learn so much by just looking at what they do itself. Speaking of Zine Fiends, I also wanted to make sure that I include some information on Zine Fiends. This is a really great way to come and meet other folks, but we spoke a little bit about topics and how to find topics. Sometimes the conversations you have with other zine makers can really inspire you, and topics come out of your day-to-day life, what you're really looking at, what you're consuming, and if Zine Fiends is a part of that, they really do help prompt you to create more. I also wanted to make sure that you have information on Good Sport. This is a gallery that Monica Joy is actually a part of. They are in the heart of downtown London, and they have this fantastic zine library. This has some information about how you can look that up or how you can go visit it or support it. It's a really amazing resource. I am so excited to have this in London. And then finally, I wanted to, in terms of resources, also wanted to just take a moment and share about brokenpencil.com. Broken Pencil magazine is a quarterly magazine. This is not local London, but this is sort of every zinester's go-to magazine. It is based on zines exclusively, along with independent creation. There's hundreds of reviews of zines all the time. There's some new tools, new templates that you can use. It is absolutely phenomenal resource. There are also the ones that run events like the Zine and the BP Zine Awards. So some place to really go and take a look and see what you might be inspired by. Then we did speak a little bit about Scribus, still not sure how to say it, but this is a open source book layout program. Again, this is great for zines. It's not just for zines, but definitely go check it out. They are a free download. They don't save your information, which is fantastic, but it really does change the game in how you create your zine layouts and such. And then the final page is just a mini zine template, just to sort of simplify things if you want to print this out and have those nice borders for yourself as well. I hope that everyone out here is making zines after this. I do want to give a huge shout out to everybody who's been a part of this through Jill and Monica, but also all the zines that I have acquired over the years. Of course, LondonFuse for letting me do this, and then London Heritage Council for really giving us this platform as well. And if you do make a zine, please tag us, use the hashtags, #LondonFuseZines, #LondonFuse, and also #CelebratingCommunities. would love to see your work out there. I would be so excited to have more and more zinesters among us. I cannot wait to see it. But with this, as I said, you will receive this little resource package. But I hope you have enjoyed this time. Thank you so much for spending it with me. And I hope all of you are staying safe and healthy. And make sure, when you're looking at the world, to see if you can make a zine out of it. Thank you.